That's right, everyone. You are listening to the Jersey First TV network, and this is Bridging the Gap. I'm AJ Malillo,
And I'm Steven Rambola.
and you can check us out anytime on Jersey First TV, where you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Spotify, and you can check out jerseyfirst.org, where you can find us over there. And you could sign up for the newsletter and sign the pledge over on jerseyfirst.org if you wanna. And you can catch all of the Nader narrative content, all of Real Talk with Fernando, and of course, all of Bridging the Gap. But this is Bridging the Gap, and Steven, it's been about a week since we talked last. So what's going on?
It has. I mean, first and foremost, I think a good thing that solar eclipse, wasn't the apocalyptic event that everybody thought it was going to be. And we're here to record another episode, so that's always refreshing.
That's huge.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I did get a chance to see it on campus. The library had some of the solar eclipse glasses. So down in Florida, the way that I've been describing it to people is like, well, the view we got was like the Apple logo. Like it was just kind of like a whoosh, right out the
Gotcha.
side, but it was still really cool to see. It's always fun to have like a celestial moment like that. So I was glad to get that done. I had some great progress on some work, turned in my big memo. So I'm basically done writing for the year, which is nice. And I know we were just talking about it prior to getting on air, but I have first real oral argument coming up on Monday. So we're recording this Thursday. So I have the weekend to prepare. I'm, going to go get the beard trimmed up, make sure the suit's looking nice so I can show up Monday ready to rock and roll. Nice.
So yeah, this was my picture of the solar eclipse from outside the steps of the courthouse on Monday when I was working.
That's cool.
It looks kind of like just a crescent moon.
Yeah, you got a way better one than we did.
I had to catch this picture in between the clouds. It was a super cloudy day.
It's all right. You still got to see it.
But anyway, as you were saying.
Yeah, we got the oral argument coming up. So I'm excited to, put on a suit and play lawyer for the first time. At this point, basically done with my first year of school.
Right.
So very excited, very much looking forward to that. And it's going to be, good spirited competition with a fellow classmate that I'm determined to go in there and beat, but in good spirits, as we do.
Sure, in good faith.
Yeah. It's an adversarial system for a reason. And then we know that. So, we're friends before we walk in, but when I'm in that courtroom, it's me and my client versus the world, baby. And that's how I'm taking this. So we're going to get justice for my woman.
Exactly what your client wants. So that's huge. That's huge. I'm all suited up today. I have a final myself. So I understand. You get to play lawyer a little bit. It's a good time. I'm representing a child. I'm a child advocate in this scenario.
Ooh.
So we're doing it. Yesterday, I finished my trial ad class last week. But this week I played the defendant for the trial ad, the people that were getting graded. And I'm proud to say that I am not guilty. They got me off. I just think we have a very pro-defense court class because both defendants got off as not guilty. So not sure what that says. I think we're just pro-defendant. Or we have a very high standard for reasonable doubt. So free man.
Very nice. Interesting because my class is quite the opposite. All of my class, I actually seem to be the only person that cares about defendants' rights in any conversation we have about criminal procedure. And all my classmates are totally okay with, Fourth Amendment violations and torturing suspects if we need to get information out of them, regardless of how reliable that information might be. So it seems like we're polar opposites on this one.
It's interesting. You should sit into one of my criminal procedure classes. You'd feel right at home. Even myself, who I find myself, I think of myself as a fairly fair guy and pretty moderate on these types of things. I mean, maybe not all cops are really terrible and like trying to steal everybody's freedoms. I mean, they got to do a little bit of investigative work.
It's fair. It could be a regional thing too. I think that has a lot to do with it, and that's genuinely. I don't want to get too off topic, but one of the most interesting things about getting my education down here is I'm used to, public education in the state of New Jersey. through my master's degree. And then, all of a sudden I come down here to the, freedom, love, and sunshine state of Florida, and everybody's cool with like yanking people's teeth out in order to get confessions. I'm like, what? Where this would never fly above the Mason-Dixon line. Never going to happen up there.
That's fair. It's funny. We were talking in class, and then we'll get into our actual stories. We were talking in class about renaming buildings, and it came up that Princeton renamed their international policy school, which was originally named after Woodrow Wilson. So did Monmouth
Yes.
University in New Jersey. But there was a bit of debate, but there wasn't much debate in New Jersey. And then a couple of the kids that were from down south, like one kid was from Alabama, and he was talking about how there was a big argument about renaming elementary schools, I think, or high schools, called Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. And so I raised my hand. I was like, I just think it's so funny because obviously there wasn't that big of a debate about renaming Woodrow Wilson's in the schools in New Jersey. But then I was like, there's not many Benedict Arnold elementary schools out there. I can completely understand, and I'm totally against renaming a George Washington High School or Thomas Jefferson High School. But Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis were active traitors against the country. I just don't find any argument very compelling as to why we have to keep their names for some sort of historical significance. Because to me, it's nah, dude, this is the US of A, and they traded. Screw them. Okay, we should know their names, we should know who they are, but we shouldn't be naming things after them.
I think it's a really interesting discussion, and now you have me curious, and I should ask some of my classmates, because I do know a few kids born and raised in Alabama, and a lot of kids down here in the South. It'd be interesting to kind of take a poll on it, because I agree. I don't think, we should have public places named after traitors to the country, but also I know that there's a really compelling argument, and it's been like this since the end of the Civil War, that it is legitimate history. And for some of these, citizens of this country, those are very much heroes and icons and stand for, the principles of states' rights, which, if that's what we're going to masquerade, under, sure.
It'd be one thing if they were naming these high schools and middle schools and putting these statutes up directly after the Civil War, or during the Civil War, or before the Civil War, but they would pop up in the 20s and 30s. It was not about the Civil War. And that's just unfair, framing of history. They were popping them up in response to increased rights of the African American population, and I think it's quite clear. But that's another discussion for another day. Let's get to the topics that we have at hand, and I think we should start with let's start with an easy story, and then we'll go to the more substantive story. But this has to do with New Jersey, and I think it's a happy story for our Jersey citizens. And this is from NJ 1015. And this story is about Airbnb bookings that have seemed to boost in New Jersey due to a New York City law that placed major restrictions on short-term rentals. So in September, bookings under 30 days are only, since September, I should say, bookings under 30 days are only allowed in New York City if the owner of the property is present during the stay. And the short-term stay has a maximum guest count of 2 people. So these New York City rules for short-term stays are among the most restrictive in the world, according to Airbnb. With demand shifting, an Airbnb spokesman, Nathan Rotman, said that hotel prices in Manhattan and other parts in the city have shot up so much that more people are looking to lodge in areas of New Jersey that are close to New York City. So places like Newark, Jersey City, and other close by areas have seen an increase in bookings. According to AirDNA, year-over-year demand for short-term stays have risen by more than 53% in Newark and Jersey City. Meanwhile, during the same time, demand in New York City fell by 46%. So the Garden State um, has seen this growing demand, but not really a big grow for listings. However, according to these figures, Airbnb says that guest travel in New Jersey has been responsible for $1 billion in direct and indirect economic contributions to the state. And in 2023, the platform claims to have collected and remitted approximately $41 million in tourism taxes in New Jersey alone. So, once again, New York law impacting New Jersey, but this time, unlike the story we had last week, this New York law is really helping the state of New Jersey. So, Steve, what are your thoughts getting these like crazy numbers because they just seem so astronomical?
Yeah. So I want to make sure I wrote it down right. $1 billion in economic contributions, and then over $40 million off of these taxes, right?
Yep.
That they've contributed back to the state. Cool. So what I think is really interesting about this, and you look at the history of this country really from its inception. New York and New Jersey, one of the two of the 13 original colonies, right? Been here since the start of it all. The Hudson Brotherhood, as some of us might like to call it. This is one of those instances where I would say, maybe it's not retribution, but let the people in New York continue to elect officials who pass ridiculous laws that benefit us. That's fine by me. New Jersey, listen, we're a small state, comparative. We are jam packed in here like sardines. But if there's one thing about us, we ride together, and so we'll pick up. We will gladly take all of the extra revenue. All those people that want to go to New York, but New York is making it clear that they don't want them there. New Jersey will take you. You just got to pay your fair share, and it seems like they have no problem doing that. So shame on New York, first of all, for passing such a ridiculous and restrictive law. It doesn't even compute into my brain that legislators thought it would be a good idea to limit short-term stays to what, max guests of 2 individuals, and the landowner has to be there. That sounds ridiculous. It sounds like me and you, if we wanted to go to the city, we'd be paying a lot of money to hang out with some random dude in his house, and that doesn't sound like a good time to anybody. And we could talk about the reasons why hotel rates have increased and those have become unaffordable, and people are forced essentially to use these alternative options. And the way that it shakes out for the great state of New Jersey, I don't see it being a problem. Let Airbnb bring another $1 billion over. Maybe we'll get $1.5 billion this year, the way that things keep going in New York. I think this is truly indicative of what poor legislation does to one state, and honestly, why it's important to have this good of a relationship. And as much as we talked last week about the MTA and how they don't really mention all of the great services and individuals that New Jersey provides to make their systems function, we do pick up a lot of the slack for our brothers in the North. And if it comes with an economic boost of $1 billion and another $46 million in tax revenue, I think that the people of New Jersey will be happy to continue allowing people to come and stay in our great state. And not for nothing, probably have a better time in New Jersey than you would staying in New York anyway. We got all the sites without all the ridiculous laws and people running up to you on the streets and punching you in the face randomly. I haven't heard much about that in New Jersey. So it seems like this is just a rave review to come and stay in New Jersey, experience the greatness of the Garden State, top to bottom, Manhattan, Manhattan-centric cities all the way down to, the Cowtown Rodeo. And we got it all, and we'll house you. If you want to go visit New York, you can come stay with us as long as you pay us that good money.
I think that's what I was going to say. New York's a great place to visit, but not a great place to stay. New Jersey's a great place to stay, and you could take your day trip to New York. It's all good.
Precisely.
And look, I think that those numbers are incredible. I mean, we know that tourism is a big thing for the state of New Jersey, whether it be on the shore or up north. And I think a lot of that money does come from the short-term rentals on the beaches. But look, if you're in Newark or New Jersey or Jersey City and you have, extra space, or maybe you go away for the summer and your place up there is open, like maybe throw it on Airbnb, see if you can qualify for that. Do a couple short-term stays while you're away during the summer, make a couple extra bucks. There's clearly a lot of demand for it. So might as well do it, right? Like, what do you got to lose? Make yourself a couple dollars, bring more money to New Jersey.
And not for nothing, you've highlighted something that I guess in its obviousness, I might have neglected to make the important point about it, but a lot of that revenue isn't going to, these massive hotels, these insane corporations. It's going to individuals, your neighbor, your maybe it's your mom and dad's second beach house, and it's extra income for you and your family that goes right into the pockets of New Jersey citizens. And so I think that's also a great incentive, is that this money, we have the tax revenue that's going to the state. So it's going to help everybody, regardless of whether or not you listed your home on Airbnb. And then that extra $1 billion is being, spread throughout all of these people that open their doors and provide a service for, people looking to travel, that New York, for some reason, decided to make it harder for people to come and visit, which just will never compute into my mind as to why you wouldn't want people to come and experience, the great city that New York is, in essence. I do believe that, as much as, I've spent the past few minutes talking down on New York. I really do believe that it is a brotherhood along the Hudson, and there is a lot to see and do up there. And I think it's a shame, really, and this is my overall point, is that the legislators are just making their city unappealing, inaccessible, and let's put it into context that we talked about last week. So if you want to go and visit Manhattan, you either have to pay a ridiculous amount of money, to get the hotel, or you and maybe one other person can go share, a little shoebox of an apartment somewhere in Midtown with the guy that actually lives there, and not have any privacy that you want while you're on vacation. And then, God forbid, you want to travel outside of Manhattan and come back in, and it's between regular business hours, you're going to get taxed out the wazoo just to pass through, like a fictional plane, with this new congestion pricing, and the price of everything in New York is already expensive. You're going to be subjected to bag searches if you want to get on the subway. It doesn't seem reasonable to me. It sounds like you're living in a police state if you decide to go to New York City, where they take your money at every turn, look inside your bags, and tell you what you can and you can't do. Come to the freedom-loving state of New Jersey, where you can book a stay for as short as you'll want. You don't have to stay with the landlord. We'll gladly take your money, and we'll be hospitable hosts, and we'll make sure that you have a good time, better than you're probably going to have in New York City.
Just make sure you're spending your money. That's all we ask.
Yeah, just as long as you're spending money. We're not. But here's the thing, and this is the appeal, truly, I think. In New York, they're making you spend your money. In New Jersey, the choice is yours. And that's really, I think, the beauty of it.
Isn't that freedom as a whole? Like, we want you to spend your money, and we're not going to hide the fact that we want you to spend your money, but you don't have to spend your money.
That's what it comes down to right there. That's exactly what it comes down to.
But Steve, we got another story that we should hit. And I think this one's interesting because I like to put this one on the list of, how should I describe this? Another instance of our elites finding out something that everybody else already knew. In other words, what's F around and find out? And that's what they did. They found out. So Harvard and Caltech will require test scores for admissions again. Harvard, this is from the New York Times, and the article says that Harvard will reinstate standardized testing as a requirement of admission. The university announced Thursday, becoming the latest in a series of highly competitive universities to reverse their test optional policies. So originally, they were going to keep the test optional policies through the entering class of fall of 2026, but they've recently said that in the fall of 2025 and beyond, they will students will be required to submit their SAT and ACT scores through the university, and few other test scores will be accepted except for in quote unquote exceptional cases. Within hours of Harvard's announcement, Caltech, a science and engineering institute, did the same. So the schools have been among nearly 2,000 colleges across the country that dropped test score requirements over the last few years, a trend that escalated during the pandemic when it was harder for students to get to test sites. But they did so also because the dropping of the test score requirements were thought of to help diversity admissions by encouraging poor and underrepresented students who had a potential but did not score well on the test to apply. But supporters of the test have said without scores, it became harder to identify promising students who outperformed their environments. Obviously. The dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, Hopi Hoekstra, said standardized tests are a means for all students, regardless of their background and life experience, to provide information that is predictive of success in college and beyond. In short, more information, especially such strongly predictive information, is valuable for identifying talent from across the socioeconomic range. Caltech in Pasadena, California, said that reinstating testing requirements reaffirmed the school's commitment as a community of scientists and engineers to using all relevant data in its decision making. And, blah, blah, blah. Explain. Applications to Harvard were down 5% this year, while those at many of its peers universities went up, suggesting that the recent turmoil over at Harvard dented its reputation. But it still received 54,000 undergraduate applicants and admitted just 3.6%. Requiring test scores could make the sorting through applications more manageable. So they go on and they say blah blah blah, like recent studies have shown that these test scores have predict college grades and the chances of graduation and the success after graduation. And Stephen, it's like you read the article, and I encourage you to go read it, and you're like, yeah, no bleep. Like, obviously, this is true. I could have told you that. I don't need scientific studies and surveys to tell you that this is true. It's just so blatantly obvious. And like, it was mind-boggling from the beginning that these quote-unquote elite institutions did this in the name of diversity. And now they're talking out of the other side of their mouth because they would have called us racist just 5 years ago for saying, hey, hold on a minute. If you get rid of these test scores, these kids that are in these areas that you want to go to your school that can outperform because they can do well on the test that shows their aptitude, because the SAT and the ACT are aptitude tests at the end of the day. So it shows that if they can outperform there, then it's much more highly predictive of their aptitude for learning, right? But it's like, no, that was racist and wrong. Except now, 5 years later, they're like, hold on, these aptitude tests really show something about the ability of other people. Like, yes, obviously that's true. I just, when things like this happen, it's just so comical to me because they just won't admit we were wrong. We should have listened. It's like, no, guess what, guys? We've come to this brand new conclusion that like you would never believe. We did all of these studies and it came to this conclusion. It's like, yes. Thank you for joining what everybody else already knew. And I think that the elites do this all the time. And it's funny, but it's so annoying to me because it's like, it's just like you cast away a majority of the population who would say what is true, and you call them bigots and you call them stupid and they don't know what they're talking about. And then 5 to 10 years down the road, when your policies utterly fail, like we all said they would, you turn around and say, the studies came out. Turns out we got this new way of going about things. And it's just the old way. And it's just another case scenario. It's like this. It's like in a couple of years, they're going to turn around and be like, turns out that electric cars drive a lot shorter distances, and it's harder to do cross-country trips in an electric car. So maybe if you're going to be traveling a lot, you should use a gas car. It's like, yes, we know that already, but you're not allowed to say that. So anyway, Steve, what are some of your thoughts?
I'll say this. You hit it dead on. And what I'm gonna say is something that, prima facie might be controversial, but say it nonetheless. Barriers to entry are a good thing. They're a good thing. And especially when we're talking about institutions of higher education, right? So I think when we look at the overall construct, and I think that this, as much as this is about, Harvard and Caltech and their admissions decisions, I think it has a lot to do with what we as a society, we as a country promote in terms of values and the things that we teach to our children and tell them that, are important and valuable and they should go ahead and chase. A very long time ago, before you and I were ever a thought, or, our parents were even a thought, a group of people sat down and decided, you know what? It's best for us as a country to educate our children up until high school. It's the state's responsibility to make sure that all of our citizens receive some degree of education through your high school diploma, GED equivalent, whatever it might be. Anything after that is purely optional. You don't need more than that, right? And it's not the state's responsibility to do more than that. And so I think if we take a really practical view of these things, there's a lot of cultural and social directives that come down from the group that you're labeling correctly, the elites, and what they tell you. Oh, this is what you should do. This is what needs to happen if you want, everything you've ever dreamed of. You have to go to school and you have to do this and you have to do that. And it gets fuzzy because then we start talking about private institutions, public institutions, what they accept, what they don't accept. And I don't think any of that is really, worth merit in this discussion. My overall point is, as you progress through life, we all meet certain baselines, right? There is equity in this country in that sense. We all operate at a very base, as long as you can show up to school every day and put in your work, you're going to get your GED. And I think that's something to be proud of as a country to begin with. And so when we talk about the pursuit of higher education, truly, it's not for everybody. It was never meant to be for everybody. And that's not saying that people who don't get college degrees are idiots. That is not at all the contention here. But if you're going to incur the debt and you're going to take on the responsibilities that come with pursuing an advanced degree, whether it's a bachelor's, a master's, or anything, beyond that, you have to prove to the people that are in charge of setting the standards and administering these degrees and these certificates and all of these things that qualify you to do these jobs, that you are qualified to do the job. And when we're talking about academics, guess what? It comes down to your ability to perform academically. And as much as it's influenced by your environment, where you're from, how you were raised, all of those things, I think that there is a natural baseline for some people. And then some people pop out and you have kids that are articulate speaking words at 1.5 years old. And that kid's going to go and he's going to have a far, brighter academic future than I ever did or could, That's just how he was put on this earth. And we have to recognize that everybody is different. And as much as we try and level the playing field, there are too many individual factors that make that unrealistic. And so when an institution, a higher education institution, as they've done forever, and as we're learning they are going to continue to do now, puts a barrier to entry and says, listen, we've been teaching kids for 200 years, however long Harvard's been in existence. We go out of our way to afford the best professors. We want to make sure that the children that come here, the young adults that come here to study, are apt and able to do what it is that we are requesting that they do. And there has to be a test, a measure, a barrier to entry to cross through. And whoever thought it would be a good idea to just get rid of that, first of all, Harvard's learning the lesson now. As you said, they effed around and found out. Nobody wanted to go to Harvard. It wasn't a special thing to go to Harvard when you could just apply with whatever GPA you want and cross your fingers and hope you get in. That takes the fun out of it. I don't know. For me, there's a certain fun component to proving yourself, putting in the work. I mean, my personal experiences, you know this. The first time I took the LSAT, I didn't do great. The first time I applied to law schools, I didn't get a single offer. I had to work to cross the threshold to get through the barrier of entry to prove that I had the intellect, dedication, drive, and ability to perform in this setting. And here I am. But I put in the work to do it. And I don't think that there should be an exception for anybody else. If you want to go and you want to chase something that requires and demands more of you and your profession than the regular average person, you need to prove that you can do it before you step foot in that place and you start learning how to do it. And like, regardless of the DEI or whatever we're going to call it, throw whatever label you want at me. Barriers to entry are a good thing. They insulate professions, they insulate conversations, and make sure that as a society, I think we agree. We want certain people to be in certain rooms making certain decisions. When you're talking about public health decisions, you want all the best doctors sitting on that board. You don't want the guy that just, because they got rid of the requirement that you need to have 100 successful heart transplants, the guy that walks in on his first day and he's only got 2 good ones but 10 botched ones because they got rid of the standard. Now he's sitting there making decisions for everybody else. As a society, we don't want that. And so we should view education the same way. We're opening doors to allow people to assume positions of power, positions where they have influence over others in society in general. There should be a barrier to entry to that, 100%. I'll stand by that to the day I die.
No, I'm with you. And I think the other thing about this is like this idea that somebody from an underprivileged community can't get a good SAT score is like so asinine to me. And it's so like, I don't know, I would say prejudicial. Look, is it easier for the kid who like grew up in the suburbs in the nice house and their parents have good money that can afford a SAT tutor? Yeah, obviously it's easier for that kid. But you know what, if that kid and the kid that grew up in the inner city with a single parent and impoverished and didn't go to a good high school, those two kids who both apply and they get the same SAT score, like obviously there's other factors there that say take the kid who's coming from more, harder means. But at the end of the day, like I said, the SAT and the ACT are aptitude tests. They are basically like high level IQ tests.
Yeah.
So that's why the upper end of the bell curve for these standardized tests are the people that are on the higher end of the bell curve of the IQ. And it's like anybody can fall there.
Yes.
Anybody can. There's no
Yes.
and this I hope is like the least controversial thing to say is the fact that like there is no actual concrete evidence that says that any race has higher IQs than any other race. So it's like it shouldn't like that. It shouldn't even come into a play. It's like, okay, Harvard is an elite institution. Princeton is an elite institution. Yale is an elite institution. And these elite institutions should be the hardest to get in because they are supposed to be for our best and brightest. And Stephen, you and I didn't go to these schools. We went to state school, right? I'm at Nova Law. It's a good law school. It's not Harvard. It's not Yale. It's not Penn down the street. Like, it should be harder to get into those schools for everybody trying to get into those schools.
100%. And I think there's another layer to this that I think is important, at least for me personally, and the way that I view the pursuit of higher education, right? You take the SAT, your senior year of high school?
Yeah, junior or senior year, sure.
Right. Okay. So I like to think, at least this is true for me, by that point, you're 12 years into public education, or private education if your parents, choose to put you in there, but you're 12 years of education. And ideally, I like to think you probably had, a good teacher or two that prepared you and said, hey, these are the things that are coming down the pike for you. And this is what you need to prepare for. And this is what is coming your way. And I know for a fact when I was in high school and I took the SAT, I think I took it my junior year. Because then your senior year, you start applying with those scores. So that makes sense. I knew that my performance on that test, my performance is going to dictate the doors that open for me. And so I think that's an important lesson behind this too. And why these aptitude tests are important is because it does teach, and it might not feel like it at that moment. And if you flash back in time and you ask me, questions, I wouldn't be able to identify this for you, but I really do believe that there is, especially in the age we live in now, with access to the internet and all of the free services that are, at everybody's disposable to learn these things and become successful at these things, it really does, to a point, come down to how bad does the student want it? The kid that comes home from school and studies and does the free prep course, and maybe he doesn't have, you can make the argument, maybe he doesn't have Wi-Fi at the house. Go to the library. I'm sure the school has an after-school program. The only point that I'm trying to make is that there are ways for children, young adults at this point, preparing to go into higher education, to understand that they are responsible for the doors that they open in their future. And so we should reward the kids that put in the extra work. And I believe that your situation truly, dictates it to an extent, but there is always a way. There's always something that you can do. If you are truly passionate about opening those doors, you will find a way. You'll struggle, you'll go through it. But if it means that much to you to go to the Harvard, to go to the Yale, and again, this is circular, but why are those the institutions? Because they're the elite ones, because they're the ones that they're the hardest to get into, the ones that require and demand the most of you. And so if you recognize that and you start applying yourself to the rigor and demand, I believe that you can overcome those situations and produce a better test result and open better doors for yourself. But it comes down to that student's ability to recognize, see, and act on that.
Stephen, I think that what you just said is like so crucial, and I think that it's something that we should harp on, because people will sit here and say we're callous, we don't understand, blah 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 blah. But here's the fact of the matter: individuals have the ability to change the direction of their own individual lives. And you could say you're saying that because you had, X, Y, yeah, you grew up with two parents in your house and you were taught that, and other people aren't told that, and blah, blah, blah. And that's all true, and that's all well and good. But like, maybe we should start telling people that. Maybe instead of saying, oh, well, they didn't have it as good, so we should lower the standards for them. What does it turn out, Steve? It turns out that when you lower the standards and you stop telling people like, hold on, you have to hold yourself accountable. You're the only person that can make your decisions for you. You're the only person that can do anything if you want your life to be different. Once you stop saying that individuals have responsibilities and agency over their own individual life and choices, then everybody's going to be dependent on some sort of big nanny state, big nanny government, big nanny corporation. It's like the reason that these tests are important, like you said, and just in general, doing hard things is important, is because it shows individuals that they have the ability to overcome their circumstances and do what they want in their lives. And I think that we have far too often lately pushed away personal agency in the name of equity, in the name of DEI, in the name of anything else you want to throw out there, when at the end of the day, the only thing that is the most predictive of success in the future is how much individual responsibility are you taking for your own actions and outcomes? Because at the end of the day, if you take responsibility for your actions and you work hard and you try and you take those opportunities into your own hands, you will succeed. You might not succeed tomorrow. You might not succeed in the way you thought you would, but you will succeed. Your life will be better because you took those opportunities. And I think that's what we should be teaching kids. That's what these elite institutions should be teaching kids. Not that, you know what, you had it hard, so we'll give you a pass.
Well, and to that point, I could not imagine, having a child someday, or telling a child, who maybe grew up in, less favorable circumstances. Maybe it is the kid in the inner city who, wants to go to Harvard, and the first teacher that he or she comes across says, well, you know, people from here don't go to Harvard. That's a poor educator. That's the individual that sets that child up for failure. When you let a child believe, or you lead people to believe, grown adults are susceptible to this, that their circumstances define all of the possible outcomes for their life and anything that they try to do. Exactly what you said. You trap somebody in their circumstances. And the beauty of America, the beauty of this country, is that we are built on the belief that you have the freedom to go and change your circumstances. That is why people, prior to Joe Biden's incredibly open border that you could just walk over with, no repercussions whatsoever, that's why people fought and died and sacrificed to come to this country, to work hard, to afford themselves the opportunities that they didn't have wherever it is they're from. And so it's such a disconnect in this country when we tell people born and raised in this country that their circumstances define them, and that their circumstances are what is going to prevent them from achieving all their dreams and goals. It's a flat out lie. Life is yours to grab, take, and run as far as you can with it. My new thing I've been saying lately is I want to ring the towel of life. And if we can teach kids that that is what this is all about, it's your effort, it's your drive, it's your determination, and it's your ability to overcome. And these are all things that you learn through life. This is why life gives us challenges, and we learn from them, and we build and we grow and we reach new heights. But it has to be predicated on that desire to go and get whatever it is that you want. As Kanye West would say, like, you can't tell me nothing. You can't tell me that I can't go and become, whatever I want to become. And like my personal experience, that first time I took the LSAT and applied, a lot of people go through all the trouble, take the test, pay the money, do the prep, send the applications, don't get anything back. I'm just going to sit there and go, well, the circumstances, it's not for me. No, you don't want it that bad then. That's all I would say. And maybe that's old school. Maybe I'm calloused, but I'm proof. I don't.
But here's the thing, Steve. Like, my thing is, I don't think that what we're saying is the callous position. I think it's the hopeful position. I think it's the proper position. I think it's the position that gives people something to live for, right? The other side of this argument is like, but the circumstances do define people. If look at the statistics, look at the numbers, and it's like, no, what you're saying breeds that outcome.
Yes.
If I turn to somebody and I said two different things, right? I turned two people in the exact same scenario, and one of them I said, you know what? It's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're in this situation. And it might not be their fault, right? It's not your fault that you're in this situation. Everything has been put against you. The whole society has been built against you. No wonder you're in the position you're in. Everything in your entire life and every single person around you has been pushing against you from succeeding. Of course you're going to fail. And then I turned to the person next to them and I said, you're in a tough spot, but you can get out. if you work hard, if you do the things that you're supposed to do, if you put yourself in the positions to succeed in the areas that you want success, you can get out of it. I can't get you out of it. Mom can't get you out of it. Mrs. Becky can't get you out of it. You can get you out of it. Which one of those messages is going to push somebody to succeed? It's clearly the second one. And you, to quote another song, this is to quote Tim McGraw, if you want it all, you got to lay it all out on the line, right? The only obstacle truly in anybody's way of success is themselves.
100%.
So I think that our message is the right message. I think it's the hopeful message. And I think that to say anything other than work as hard as you possibly can, and that doesn't mean you're going to get into Harvard, right? Like, you have to be realistic, right? Just because you're going to work really hard doesn't mean you'll get into Harvard. But you know what? If you work really hard, you might get into Boston University. You might get into, Montclair State. You might get into somewhere else. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that to be funny. I mean that to be practical. Like we just said, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, these are the elite of the elite, and only the elite of the elite should get in. But that doesn't mean you can't go somewhere and better yourself somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And working hard is going to put you in opportunities that you wouldn't have if you didn't. So I think it's about time that we should wrap up this episode, and I hope that it's leaving on a hopeful cause and a hopeful message, and that is that any individual listening to this, any individual that finds themselves in a position in which they don't know if they can get out of it, they don't know if they can succeed, the only person that can get you out of it is yourself. And the only way you're going to succeed is if you take the steps towards succeeding. Nobody else can do it for you.
100%. I couldn't have said it better. I think my last piece on this would be similarly, life is what you make of it. And barriers to entry are a good thing. Doors in your way are a good thing, because you should wake up every day and you should see the barrier and you should see the door, and it should give you something to chase. It should give you something to say, you know what, that door's in front of me. I'm going to kick it down. That barrier's in front of me. I'm going to leap over it higher than they ever thought that I could. That's what life is about. Chasing greatness, chasing your potential, and executing on it. So I would say the same thing AJ said. Anybody that is listening to this, that is in that position, maybe you've been told your whole life that your circumstances define your outcomes. Let us be the first to tell you, sincerely, that's not true. And these are good things. They are designed to push you and help you extract every ounce of life that's worth living within yourself. So I say chase it. Chase fast and chase hard.
Absolutely. Stephen, for another episode of Bridging the Gap and Jersey First TV, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I'm Stephen Robola.
And we'll talk to you next week, everyone. Have a good one.